Welcome to the News at 5. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with the legal system. Justice Miriam Hassan of the FCT High Court, Gwarinpa, Abuja, will on December 18th rule on the bail application of the former Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige. Mr. Ngige will be on remand at the Ngige Correctional Centre till the date when his bail application will be decided. Justice Hassan issued the order on Monday shortly after taking arguments for and against the bail request of the former governor of Benue State. Counsel to the former minister, Patrick Ekweto, pleaded with the judge to admit the former minister to bail on various reasons, but mainly on health grounds. He added that Mr. Ngige was not a flight risk and does not have the capacity to leave the country at this period. He submitted that the former minister will not jump bail nor interfere with witnesses if admitted to bail. However, counsel to the EFCC, Silvanus Tahir, opposed the bail request, insisting that Mr. Ngige was a flight risk indeed. He told the judge that the defendant was granted administrative bail by the EFCC and allowed to travel abroad for medical care, but never reported back to the EFCC. He says that the international passport released to him to facilitate his travel was never returned till today. The senior lawyer argued that it was when he was arrested that he came up with the purported claim that he lost his passport, insisting that the claim of passport loss was an afterthought and should not be believed by the court. Mr. Tahir urged the court to dismiss the bail request for being frivolous. After the submissions, the judge fixed December 18th to deliver ruling on the bail request. The former Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, was last Friday arraigned on an 8-count charge of alleged corrupt practices. He pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has upheld the power of the President to declare a state of emergency in any state to prevent a breakdown of law and order or degeneration into a state of chaos or anarchy. In a split decision of 6-1, the Apex Court held that the President, during a state of emergency, can indeed suspend elected officials, but that such suspension must be within a limited period. In the lead majority judgment, Justice Mohammed Idris held that Section 305 of the Constitution empowers the President to deploy extraordinary measures to restore normalcy where emergency rule is declared. He noted that Section 305 is not specific to the nature of the extraordinary measures so concerned, thereby granting the President the discretion on how to go about it. Now, the judgment was on the suit filed by the Adamawa governor and 10 other People's Democratic Party-led states challenging the propriety of the state of emergency declared by President Bola Tinubu in Rivers State, during which elected officials were suspended for 6 months. Justice Idris, in the earlier part of that judgment, upheld the preliminary objection raised by the two defendants against the competence of the suit. In upholding the objections raised by the Attorney General of the Federation and the National Assembly, the defendants, Justice Idris, held that the plaintiffs, the 11 PDP states, failed to establish any cause of action capable of activating the original jurisdiction of the Apex Court. He struck out the suit for want of jurisdiction, proceeded to also determine the case on merit, and dismissed it. However, Justice Obande Ogbunya dissented and held that the case actually did succeed in part. Among others, he held that although the President could declare a state of emergency, the President cannot use such power as a tool to suspend elected state officials, including governors, deputy governors, and members of Parliament. The President of Dangote Industries Limited, Aliko Dangote, has once again criticized the Nigerian downstream oil sector regulation. The regulator, that is the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, calling for an investigation and prosecution of its Chief Executive Officer, Farouk Ahmed, over an alleged economic sabotage and undermining of domestic refining in the country. Speaking at a press conference at the Dangote Petroleum Refinery in Bejuleki, Lagos State, Alhaji Aliko Dangote accused the leadership of the NMDPRA of colluding with international traders and oil importers to frustrate local refining through the continued issuance of import licenses for petroleum product. He also alleged that Ahmed was living beyond his legitimate means, claiming that 4 of his children attend secondary schools in Switzerland at a cost of $5 million. Aliko Dangote, however, assured Nigerians that the pump price of premium motor spirit, petrol, will fall further, and asserts that the commodity will sell at no more than 740 naira per litre from Tuesday, beginning in Lagos, because of his refinery's reduction of the gantry price to 699 naira per litre. Aliko Dangote also dismissed claims that President of the United States, Donald Trump, is unhappy with the establishment of the $20 billion refinery. Dangote swiftly pointed out that the USA has been a major supplier of crude to the refinery, adding that the talk about President Trump being angry over its establishment does not hold water.
Malam Farouk has 4 of his children that he educated in Switzerland at the cost of $5 million for their secondary school education alone, not university. And I know that one of them just finished Harvard. So I want to now see what kind of system are we operating that, people are now busy destroying a country, taking money from the government. Because when you look at his income does not match paying this kind of fees. I think even if it's me paying $5 million for 6 years for my 4 children, the taxman has to look at my taxes, how much I paid. And really, this sort of thing, we're not going to allow it to continue. We'll take it up to the highest authority so that they will look at it. People who have done something wrong must be prosecuted. Anybody who can buy 10 trucks, come and buy 10 trucks at 699. We are going to use whatever resources that we have to make sure that we crash the price down. We will get these sales. Maybe it will take us a week to 10 days. By the grace of God, within a week to 10 days, we will be able to deliver. We don't want to see, at least for this December, January, to sell petroleum product more than 740 naira. The US has been one of our major suppliers. That's why when somebody said that Trump is not happy with this refinery, I said, no, I'm sure Trump too. He will ask his intelligence people, tell you he's more than happy, because on average, for a year, we will not buy less than 100 million barrels from US. So, I mean, US is also a major beneficiary.
Now, the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Professor Ntawe, has waded into the feud between the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. George Akume, and the Governor, Hyacinth Alia, of Benue State, following the standoff at the TIV Day celebration recently in Boko. Professor Ntawe, who expressed worry over the intra-party crisis, says the TIV ethnic nationality needs to close ranks amongst their leaders to enable them fight insurgency and insecurity threatening the state. The APC national chairman stated this at the 2025 TIV Day celebration.
TIV Day is the annual celebration of the culture, history, and unity of the TIV people, a prominent tribe in Benue State, north-central Nigeria. This year's event, themed The Rebirth of the TIV Nation, brings together sons and daughters of the land to reflect on their heritage and collective future. Over the years, the TIV people have made significant contributions to Nigeria's social, political, and economic development. Contributions acknowledged by President Bola Tinubu, who is represented at the event by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation.
This reflects, I believe, that collective efforts are essential to national progress and cohesion.
However, the celebration turned sour as youths engage in a free-for-all. One person is injured. When the dust finally settled, the paramount ruler of the TIV nation highlights the security challenge in communities around the area.
The President will still recall your visit to Benue following the killings of Yewata to condole and encourage us, and the subsequent positive actions you have taken thereafter to improve security situation in Benue.
Meanwhile, Governor Alia launched the Thief Dictionary.
We launched the Dictionary of Thief Language. Thank the federal government whose magnanimity has permitted major tribes, including the Thief, to be taught in schools up to the university level.
In his address, the APC national chairman promises to resolve the dispute within the party in the state.
If we can't have peace within ourselves, we can't defend the enemies from outside. We need the internal peace within ourselves. We need to reconcile ourselves. We need to work with one voice.
The celebration also featured the conferment of chieftaincy titles on notable personalities, including the national chairman of the APC, Governor Alia, and other distinguished Nigerians.
Nigeria's Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, has urged the Nigerian Army to enhance its operational effectiveness amidst what he describes as an increasingly complex security environment. Speaking at the Chief of Army Staff Annual Conference 2025, he says that the gathering was key to reviewing operations, assessing readiness, and aligning military strategy to address terrorism, banditry, and other asymmetric threats. The minister noted that although security challenges persist, the capacity of terrorist groups and criminal networks has been significantly degraded nationwide, crediting the gain to the professionalism of the troops, improved planning, and joint multi-agency operations. He stressed that sustained progress depends on strong inter-service cooperation and intelligence sharing, adding that coordinated operations are vital to preventing insecurity from returning to cleared areas. The conference was attended by Vice President Kashin Shettima, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and the service chiefs. The Nigerian Air Force has announced the successful conduct of a precision air interdiction mission on December 14th this year at Dabar Masara, a known terrorist location in southern Tumbunz, as part of ongoing operations to dislodge insurgents and disrupt terrorist activities and logistics. A statement signed by the Director of Public Relations and Information, Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Ehime Ejodame, says acting on credible intelligence indicating the presence of a terrorist workshop and sustained movement of armed elements, the air component of Joint Task Force Operation Hadinkai deployed an integrated force package to conduct coordinated intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions, ISR, with strike operations. The statement explains that prior ISR missions had revealed repeated terrorist movement within the area, as well as significant concentration of vehicles concealed under vegetation, confirming the location as an active terrorist hub. The statement adds that following positive identification and in strict adherence to rules of engagement, the targets were engaged, and a post-operation battle damage assessment confirmed that the identified vehicles were indeed destroyed and terrorist elements neutralized. The statement further adds that the successful execution of the mission underscores the NAF's continued commitment to intelligence-driven, precise air operations in support of national effort to degrade terrorist networks and enhance security across affected regions. Former Minister of Information Lai Mohammed has reiterated the federal government's stance on the October 2020 EndSARS protest, maintaining that no massacre occurred at the Lekki toll gate. He made the remark during an appearance on Channels Television's morning program, Sunrise Daily, where he discussed his new book, Headlines and Soundbites, Media Movements That Defined an Administration. Addressing the October 2020 protest, the former minister acknowledged that casualties were recorded in other locations, including Kano and Abuja, but emphasized that the administration he served under never denied that lives were lost.
Our position on EndSARS was very clear. At no point did the federal government say there were no casualties during EndSARS. There were casualties. We reported them, we admitted them. 37 policemen lost their lives. 6 soldiers lost their lives. That's during EndSARS. Nobody speaks about this. But we admitted it. We gave the numbers that lost their lives in Kano, in Abuja, everywhere. But what we said and what we still insist on, that there were no massacres at the Lekki toll gate. And I think this is where I disagreed with the CNN. The CNN was not at the Lekki toll gate. The CNN relied on poorly sourced stories to write their story.
You still stand by that?
Absolutely. That's why there's a whole chapter devoted to that. This is what is the only massacre in the whole of the world that there are no bodies. We did not say people didn't die in Lagos. People died in Alimosho, people died everywhere. But there was no massacre at the toll gate. And I challenge anybody to come and tell me today that my son or my daughter was at the toll gate, he didn't come back home.
Now to business news. In line with the projections made by the financial derivatives company, the FDC, Nigeria's inflation fell further to 14.45%, down from 16.05% drop recorded in October. The figure, which accurately matches FDC's forecast, marks the 8th consecutive month of sustained decline amidst ample food supply, stable naira exchange rate, and the base year effect. Key highlights of the inflation number shows that food inflation slowed to 11.08% from a previous 13.12%, while core inflation dropped from 18.69% to 18.04%. At the same time, the NBS report says urban inflation rate dropped, or rather dipped, from 15.65 to 13.61%, while rural inflation was moderately lower at 15.15%. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission says permits issued to 42 companies to access flared gas could attract about $2 billion in investment, create over 100,000 jobs, generate up to 3 gigawatts of power, and cut more than 6 million tons of carbon emissions. Addressing the successful bidders, the NUPRC Chief Executive, Benga Komolafe, says the initiative will strengthen Nigeria's energy transition plan by converting wasted gas into economic value while boosting local content development across the gas value chain. The permits were issued under the Nigerian Gas Flare Commercialization Program, which brings together government, private investors, and development partners to curb gas flaring. Nigeria remains one of the world's top flaring nations, with the flaring continuing despite rising oil production and its environmental and economic costs. As the takeoff date for Nigeria's new tax laws set for January the 1st draws near, concerns have risen over some gray areas which have sparked a firestorm of controversy. An associate director of Anderson Nigeria, Oladejo Adeyemi, who was a guest on our Business Morning program, identified a major part of the new tax law which has made some Nigerians uncomfortable. He also clarified some widely held misconceptions regarding the new regulation.
I think topmost in the list of those is, of course, as you would expect, the ones that would affect the SMEs. You know, it's the fact that tax identification and tax ID registration and all of that, you know. So that part has really been concerning for a lot of people, especially where people have heard that the banks are going to be having reporting obligations and you may not be able to do certain transactions except you are tax registered. The taxing regime still requires you as an individual or as a corporate, you know, to declare. So the regime is still based on self-assessment. So nobody is going to go into your bank. I've heard all sorts. People have set up ring lights to say all manners of things. Nobody is going to go into your bank account and say, this 100 million you have or this 30 million, this is your tax, I'm taking it. You know, that is never going to happen. If that happens, then that is not in line with the provisions of any law.
The Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise has asked the federal government to adopt clear and credible roadmap for cost-reflective electricity tariffs, as the current financing model for the power sector is fiscally unsustainable. In a statement signed by its CEO, Dr. Muda Yusuf, the economic and policy advisory firm says this will enable the clearance of the current 4 trillion naira debt within the sector. Addressing the power sector reform as one of the most politically sensitive components of the Nigeria Economic Reform Program, the CPPE advocates implementation of a phased transition toward cost-reflective pricing with targeted social protection for vulnerable consumers and to help strengthen governance and accountability. The South African Reserve Bank says it's planning the biggest overhaul of the country's cash system in decades. According to the central bank's latest announcement, the move aims to create a cash management company, roll white label ATMs, and tighten oversight of how money circulates to make it cheaper and easier to access. The initiative by the SARB, known as Cash Smart Strategy, seeks to ensure physical funds remain accessible for low-income and rural communities that have limited digital payment options and often face costs as much as 5 times higher than wealthier urban users. SARB expects cash usage to drop by 30% to 40% when the nation reaches digitization levels comparable to India, Brazil, and the European Union. That's it on the news at 5. Thank you for watching. I'm Olumide McCall.